I think that when you go into that conversation, are you going in with love? Yeah. Because when we step into a situation where we're breaking up with somebody, what we feel is that love has been lost.
Right.
What we feel is that there's an absence
of
love, and I got to sever this relationship because I don't love this person.
Yeah.
But at the bare minimum, they are a human being.
Yeah.
And God has asked us to love. And I just look at, we've referenced 1 Corinthians 13 in a lot of our relationship podcasts so far. But are we patient with them? Are we kind? Are we doing this with a lack of arrogance going into a breakup because we love this person as a human being? I think that's a good indicator. So good. You know?
Hey guys, welcome to our podcast. I'm here with Ju and with Sam.
Let's go.
And we are discussing one of the tough topics today. How do we break up well? And how do we respond in breakups?
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
The good, the bad, the ugly, and hopefully the mature and healthy and not ugly. You know, the actually good breakup kind of thing. There is a way. There is a way.
There's a good breakup.
Okay, so thank you, Sam. And we are going to talk about it. So first question, I think, is really good. What are some practical steps for you in determining it's time to break up? Like, I know it's time.
For me personally, it was and has been a situation where the Lord is actually speaking to me about a relationship ending. Where I've seen it mostly. Or if I'm noticing a constant trend and there's not change in areas where there's conflict or there's areas of unhealth.
Yeah.
Super good.
I would put it in 3 categories. I'd say the Lord, community, and again, patterns. Yeah. So if I look at that person, I'm like dating, and one thing is it's totally okay for you to break up with someone and you're dating. People think of like, I'm dating, so I'm committed and we're gonna get married. Right. No. You're trying to get to know each other. It's okay if you break up. And why I'm saying this, because sometimes you get to know a person, you're like, I actually don't like you that much, and it's okay. Like it's okay for me not to think that you're gonna be the person that I'm gonna spend the rest of my life with. So patterns, community. I've been in relationships that I was like, I'm sure it's the Lord, and then my community, my leaders went to me and they were like, no, it's not, break up. And I was like, no, it's the Lord. And they were never forcing me to break up, but they're like, take it to the Lord, let him speak to you. Like, we feel off about it. So leaders, and always the Lord. Like, sometimes it's like, hey, the Lord is actually speaking to me about this. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the person is a bad person, is like, the person's doing something wrong or off. Maybe it's just not the person that you're supposed to be focusing in the season, you know? So really I would put this 3 categories.
Yeah, so I think there's one thing that I would add just to make sure. Like, the reason we're dating, right, is to decide, is this the person I want to marry? Is this the person I want to spend the rest of my life with? So the moment that I decide, hey, I know this is not who I want to marry, that's a good time to break up.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we can do this. I'm going to speak for myself. I think women in general, I cannot speak as a man because I've never been one.
I'll speak as a man.
But I think sometimes what we might do is we're like, well, I really like having someone.
Yeah.
I really like the way having a boyfriend makes me feel. And so I know I'm not going to marry them, but I'm just going to keep using them for my emotional needs that I have. Yeah. And I counsel girls all the time, like, no, like, if you have decided this is not who I want to marry, whether it be because you don't like them, whether it be because a mentor has reached out and said, hey, this isn't great, or whether it just be like, God's like, this is not your spouse. Do not continue leading them on and dragging them on in your emotional game. End it. Right? How do we do breakups well?
My track record's not.
I broke up through the phone a couple of times.
You say your track record's not good. What are some things you learned?
My track
record's not great. What were things that you did maybe breaking up with girls in the past or going through breakups that you're like, ooh, I would not do that again? Which, by the way, we're all believing you'll never go through a breakup again because we currently love your girlfriend who is shouting off camera.
So do I.
But you know, what would you take from those last relationships and go, I wouldn't do this again?
I would be sure. And constant. I think that there's a lot of, and maybe y'all listening have felt this way of there's a decision made, but there's not assuredness in it.
Gotcha.
There's a decision made, but there's not follow through. And I think for me, what caused so much riff is that I would make a decision and there would be like half-hearted nature following it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why I said my track record wasn't the best in this situation, where I would kind of hold on to expectations or plans or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I wasn't consistent with the decision I made.
What was making you indecisive?
I think thinking that so if it's in the context of a godly relationship, or it's in the context of not being anywhere near a godly relationship, I think it was the expectations.
Yeah.
It was filling the void. And you said it on the side of a woman, is that maybe there's the emotional attachment or the thing, but I think for me it was like having that that relational equity. I think you want that. You long for that. It doesn't matter who you are, guy or female. Yeah. So that was it for me.
Yeah, that's good.
3 things again. I would do it faster once I recognize this is not it. Sometimes like I'm so attached to you already. So I'm like, oh, let's slowly break it up, So I'll stop answering to you. I'll stop answering your calls. I'll slowly get to the point and it's like, okay, we don't feel as close anymore, so I can break up with you now.
Would you say you broke up with them without breaking up with them?
A few times.
I'm just asking, I think that's something people probably do, right? We're like,
exactly.
Let me distance myself.
Yeah.
That's it.
So that when we break up, like neither one of us is shocked.
Detachment.
It's
totally. Detaching.
This is so vulnerable, but I used to remember
by the way, it's manipulative. But
I knew that the Lord was like asking me to break up with someone and I didn't want to. So I was like, Lord, please make them do something wrong so I have an excuse to break up with them.
That's real.
It's legit.
That made Jesus feel really good.
Yeah.
So I remember doing that because I was like, I don't want to be the one that's, like, oh yeah, I don't want to break up with you because I don't. And I think it goes to one of my points too now is don't blame it on the Lord. Sometimes we don't want to take responsibility for it. So we were like, yeah, it's all the Lord, like the Lord. No, like it is the Lord, but take responsibility. The Lord is saying, but I'm deciding that I'm going to listen to his voice and I'm going to break up with you. Yeah. I feel like so many times we're just so afraid to take responsibility for the fact that I don't feel like I'm supposed to be with you anymore. The Lord is like clearly saying that. So I'm like, no, be mature enough. If you are okay with saying yes to that person to start a relationship, be mature enough to say no to end that relationship as well.
That's good. Right. And I think one thing that we do is we go, well, I don't want to be the one that breaks your heart. I don't want to be the one that hurts you. Yeah. So I'm going to behave in a way that provokes you to break up with me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's something I want to touch on too.
Please.
Do you think, from my perception, that was always about the approval of man?
Yeah, for sure.
Not wanting to, in the name of not hurting somebody, you didn't do something was because you were afraid of what people would think about you.
And that's a big deal when we talk about doing dating in community, right? Because we have this community involved. And I'll say, like, we're talking about breakups because they're not always cut and dry, black and white, so easy.
Yeah, no.
When you're dating in a community, you're starting to go, well, wait, like, if we break up and these are our mutual friends and these are our mutual mentors.
We all have friends, yes.
Who gets what friend? It becomes like a divorce, right? And you're like, well,
you get half of the friends and you get half of the
portion it all.
Split them 50-50. And you're also thinking, I don't want other people to think I'm the bad guy. Yeah. Like, I don't want to be the one responsible for breaking that person's heart. And so we start thinking of manipulative ways. Yeah. Bill Johnson says manipulation is witchcraft. And so I think that's one thing.
Everything that I said.
And
I rebuke myself.
I think that is a tactic of the enemy, though, that invites demonic activity when we start trying to manipulate as opposed to own our decision and deal with the consequences. Yeah. And they're not always great. Yeah. But we decided to get into this relationship, and if we're deciding to to break up, like you said, then we also have to deal with the consequences.
You asked the question, how do you do breakups well?
Right.
I would say one thing that I've learned on my last relationship when I went to break up with a guy, again, like my leaders were saying no, God was saying no, went to break up with a guy. I did it in a way that I would have never done it by myself, but I follow 100% of what other people were telling me to do. I think that's a beautiful way for you to do breakups, is involving your leaders in your community and saying, hey, I'm doing this. What do you think it's wise? Here's the situation.
And they care about both of you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the key too. Exactly. They care about both of you. So when you bring it to them, they're also thinking about how that person's going to feel, how they're going to respond.
And in that situation with her, like those were conversations we were having with her biological parents, her spiritual mom and going, okay, we care about him as a human being. We don't want you to mistreat him while you're in this process. So let's talk about, and as we're talking about good breakups, how do I honor this person while doing something that of course is going to hurt them? Like if you're afraid to hurt somebody, you probably just shouldn't do relationships at all, right? Because they don't work. So no, like we're going to do this, and I know this is going to hurt, but how can I do this in the most honoring person towards you as a child of God, right?
I was just gonna say, I want to start like even that topic, reading Philippians 2:3-4. We quote this verse all the time in our community, and it's do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Here it says nothing, and nothing means nothing. So nothing, do nothing from selfish ambition, and in humility count others more significant than yourselves. And I'm like, I feel like it's so important for breakups, because when you're the one breaking up, normally you're like, oh yeah, I'm superior right now. Like you don't care as much for them, or you're like, you don't look at them as highly than yourself. You don't treat them as the Bible says that we should treat others that's more significant than yourselves. We treat them, no, you're not for me, so you're, like we don't care about them. So I think that verse applies so much for when I'm breaking up with someone and caring about them. I'm like, and we talk about it a lot, but I'm looking at them as a son and a daughter of Christ before anything else. Like, maybe you're not supposed to be with me, but I care about you so much. I hope you find the person. I hope you're going to fulfill the calling of God in your life, So
let's talk about this. We have decided from the Lord, from ourselves, our choices, mentors, whatever, we've decided it's time to break up. What are some honoring keys to having that conversation? And I'm going to start with one. It should be a conversation and not done over text, unless it has been abusive or unhealthy. If that's the case, totally different story. You don't need to put yourself in a dangerous situation. But if it has been a relationship that is normal, we're going to have a conversation face to face. What does that look like? What are some keys for people to take into that conversation?
I like what you were saying about seeing them as a daughter and son of God. And I think that when you go into that conversation, are you going in with love? Because when we step into a situation where we're breaking up with somebody, what we feel is that love has been lost.
Right.
What we feel is that there's an absence of love, and I got to sever this relationship because I don't love this person. But at the bare minimum, they're a human being. And God has asked us to love. And I just look at, we've referenced 1 Corinthians 13 in a lot of our relationship podcasts so far. But are we patient with them? Are we kind? Are we doing this from with a lack of arrogance going into a breakup because we love this person as a human being? I think that's a good indicator.
So good. Believing, I think one part of 1 Corinthians 13 is believing the best in them. And that's really hard to break up.
That's godly.
Because I'm probably breaking up with you because I saw something that wasn't the best. Sometimes. Not always. And I want to say that, like, sometimes you don't break up because there was somebody cheated or something went wrong or somebody was a bad person. Like, sometimes you just break up because you realize you just happen to not be the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. And you're still amazing, right?
You're great.
And so going into that conversation, I always try to tell people, remember why you started dating them in the first place. Right? Like, you saw things in them that you were attracted to and that you admired. If you're a believer, they're a believer, right? Like, hopefully. So I'm going into that going, like, you're an amazing person. Now let's have this breakup. Do you have any points you want to add to that?
We talk a lot about that in leadership, but it's like, and I think it's super applicable for breakups. And it's like, when I'm talking to the person, I'm making sure that I'm not just talking, but I'm actually being heard by them. So it's like they're actually, like, I'm communicating in a way that they are going to understand. And it's not just like, hey, I'm just talking and I made my part's done and I broke up with you. And if you didn't understand, like, it sucks for you, No, I'm talking, but I'm making sure that you are listening to what I'm saying and you're comprehending what I'm saying. And I'm sitting down and I have my heart positioned in a way that's like, I'm here for you as much as I am for me. And it's like, hey, are you understanding what I'm saying? Like, let's talk about it and not just like, I got to get it done. I did my thing and now I'm gone and like, go live your life, Like,
I've met people who like have walked away from a breakup and gone like, I think I was broken up with, but I'm not really sure, because because there wasn't clarity.
Yeah.
And there's all of this, like, I'm trying not to hurt your feelings, so I'm not clear.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one point that I was going to say is, like, in a breakup, you need to be very clear. Like, I no longer want to date you.
Yeah.
This relationship is ending. I'm not going to call you tonight after this conversation. Like, we're done. And if possible, especially if you're within community, really smart to maybe, I wouldn't usually do it during the breakup. If y'all are both on the same page, it's different, right? Like if we're both on the same page,
like, you don't like me,
this was mutual,
good.
we're good. You can talk about like, okay, what does it look like for us to now kind of shift our lives as individuals within our community?
Yeah.
But if someone got really hurt and you both still have to live in this community together, you might want to set a time and go, hey, take a month, take a week, whatever it is, process all of this. Can we get back together, either just the two of us or bring in a mediator and talk about what does it look like for both of us to be broken up inside this community now? And how are we going to do that well where no one's hurting secretly?
And I was just going to say, it's even easier when you don't cross any boundaries
100%.
or you don't like go too fast because you're breaking up and it's like, okay, you didn't share too much.
Right.
You didn't do too much. So we can be in the same room and it might take 3 months for us to be able to be in the same room, but we can be friends again because we never crossed a line here that was not supposed to be crossed.
And I've talked about that in breakups that I've had, right? Where it's like one or both of us decided, you're not the person I want to marry.
Yeah.
We sat down, we had a conversation. We didn't cross physical boundaries. We went at an emotional pace that worked for both of us.
Yeah.
So we came together, and it's not that one person wasn't hurt because, like, I thought you were going to be my spouse and now you're not. But at the same time, there was no baggage where we could be like, I could still hang out with you maybe in 6 months after my heart heals, right?
Yeah,
we can still be friends. Like you just decided I wasn't who you want to marry. You weren't like crushing me as a person. You weren't all those kind of things. And this leads into the question I wanted to ask you. How do you respond when you're broken up with? How do you respond after a breakup? How do we do that in a godly, healthy way?
Nobody ever broke up with me. I actually broke up with all my people.
I'm sorry, Jez. I'll let you down.
So sorry.
You chose the wrong.
Wait, I can say from like not experience.
Well,
but
that's great. Well, okay, let's
just
say
like
this
the
then.
side of like
even
not
if you're the
feeling-
one doing the breakup, how do we
Yeah.
do this in a good, healthy way?
Yeah.
Or what was done to you that you're like, man, I wish that girl would have never acted like that after we broke up, right?
Yeah, I think that when there has been discord, you see sides of people. I think that
100%.
you would have never if there wasn't
Yeah.
conflict. And for me, that's really what started shedding light on. Oh, okay, like I need to protect myself.
Yeah.
Like even as a guy, just protect myself from some of these things that could severely wound me. Whether it's like verbal, and if anyone's in a physical abusive situation, please like take that to somebody.
Right.
Yeah, it's so different. But I think just as time goes on, realizing that, taking that to the Lord and leaders, and then I'll speak an example because it happened to me. When I took that to this person and did the breaking up, those things that were originally noticed do come out, and you'll see maybe even more. There'll be a lot of emotion. There'll be, if that's the case, and
name calling, accusations, right?
That's what I was gonna say.
I was gonna say put some labels on that, right?
So it's
derogatory comments.
Yeah, it's very degrading, and like
you
have to be ready. If you're in that situation, you have to be ready to endure that. I would say.
Yeah.
And I've been in that. I've been in an enduring process of like walking that out and doing that in community.
Yeah.
So I think for me, this is a good part of walking out breakups is how do you respond in community when you've done it?
So good.
Yeah.
And so I'll talk about that in a second. How do you allow people to come alongside you too?
Yeah.
Because initially in my past relationship, when I ended things, there was a process of inner turmoil. People around me didn't understand what was going on because I was isolated the whole time and didn't bring it to people. So I know what that feels like. And so it was so difficult for me to allow people in because they didn't know for the time or the period of time that things were happening. They didn't have a clue. And so the process of me bringing people in was
it takes vulnerability.
Yeah.
Of like, hey, actually, let me show you now everything that, and even like if you're being broken up with, it's like someone just broke up with me. Like it's painful. It takes like
allow yourself to grieve.
Yeah, allow yourself to cry. And I was gonna say exactly the same thing. Like if I'm broken up with, I don't want to go and just start like, I don't know, saying bad things about that person. You know, I'm still looking at a person as a daughter and a son of Christ, and I don't want the person to do the same with me. Like, if I was the one doing something wrong and the person broke up with me, I don't want it to do that. And if I'm the one breaking up, I don't want the other person to do that. So I think it's always keeping in mind that the other person, and I'll repeat it again, it's a son and a daughter of Christ, and I'll respond to Christ like how I treated that person. We talk about
I'm gonna give a couple thoughts about that. Yeah. First off, trials and pain do not create heart issues, they reveal them.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're someone who's been broken up with, and all of a sudden your claws come out, right? And it's like, I'll talk to girls after they've gotten a breakup, and it cracks me up. Like last week, I love him. He's my everything. And then he breaks up with her, and she's like, I never liked him anyway, hated him, and he this and he that, and his breath smells, and you know, like the most random attacks come out, and I'm like, whoa, like last week you were ready to marry the boy. Like if he would have proposed, you'd have a ring on your finger right now. So first off, like everything you're saying, one, is a lie. And you're using those accusations to try and protect yourself from pain.
Yeah, that's
so good. And you think that's how you can, like, actually even present yourself to community? Like, I'm fine. I hated him anyway.
Yeah.
Like, no, sweet baby girl. Yeah. You're in pain, and you need to heal, and you should probably keep your mouth shut until you do, right? Yeah. Second, when you start becoming that gossiper and, like, accusatory, you're partnering with the enemy, right? Yeah. You're accusing the brethren of stuff. Sometimes it's not even true. Sometimes it is, but I'm also like, you were still okay with it last week and now you're not, right?
Yeah.
And you become known as the girl or the guy that, man, when she or he gets broken up with, she will rip into you and tear you to pieces, and she'll do everything to try and take your reputation down, right? Yeah. And if you become that girl or you become that guy, I don't know about you, but like when I hear that about a guy, I'm like, I'm not dating them. Yeah. Because if it doesn't work out, I'm going to get eaten alive. Yeah. And I'm not willing to take that risk, right? Yeah. So, like, those are some things, of course, honor them because Jesus says to. Yeah. But also, that's not who you want to be. That's not who you are. So, if I'm broken up with and those things start coming out, and some of them will, what a beautiful opportunity to go to Jesus and be like, wow, like there's some hatred in my heart. There's some jealousy in my heart. Like there's some competition in my heart. Yeah. Can we deal with these, Lord? Yeah. Like let's deal with this stuff, you know?
Yeah. Alongside that, I will say this. I learned so much in that process of a breakup. And for even the person doing it, if you're the person doing the breaking up, just take survey. Look at how your relationship was in its entirety and see where you had shortcomings, see where you had imperfections, see where, because then it takes it from like, this was complete blame on somebody. Yeah. And it wasn't ever that way. It's more that like you would allow the Lord to refine you. Yeah. And that has gone so far in even my relationship now is noticing where I was inconsistent in relationship, noticing where I had flaw. And I think that's just good all around.
Yeah. Right.
You know?
So good.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
And I feel like a lot of people ask that question. I've asked myself that question. You feel like the Lord is saying yes at the beginning for you to date that person. It comes to the point and the Lord is saying the one who's saying break up with that person. Right. Did I miss the Lord?
Isn't that that's the hardest thing?
Yeah, I know that you have great stories about that.
So. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, I use a story, it's now been 15 years because I'm old, that I knew God told me to date this guy that had been a best friend. And to be honest, I the blinders were on. I was not interested in him at all. He comes to me after a year of friendship. He's like, I am interested in you. I want to date you. I'm like, thanks so much. Only see you as a friend. And then within like a few weeks, like I was feeling this like, oh gosh, like something's shifting in my heart. Yeah. And my community, my mentors were like, you're blind. Like he's a perfect match for you. Like this is so Jesus. Yeah. And I went into it like, okay, like, yeah, this really feels like the Lord, and I could see him as somebody I could marry. We started dating. Long story short, we dated for 2 years. And then it was time to start talking marriage because we were about to graduate university. And we decided, hey, like, let's come together, let's pray, let's fast. Are we supposed to get married? And I just heard so clearly from the Lord that he was not meant to be my husband. And we had dated for a couple of years. So for me, answering your question, I think the Lord will lead you to date someone that's not going to be your spouse from time to time because it's going to produce something in you.
Yeah.
And it's going to teach you something, and it's going to make you more like him. And he'll use that just like he'll use any other circumstance. Yeah. I don't think that gives us a right to just date whoever we want whenever we want. If we don't think they'd be our husband, like, well, I'm just going to date him anyway. No. Like, he's going to lead you into relationships where you're seeing qualities of the man you want to marry. Yeah. Or woman, sorry. Okay. And like, I'm very confident in my masculinity here. But then when he says to end it, like it still is him, right? And he's still going to use that.
I was going to say, I think it's so cool because he also shows us that the Lord's asking you to break up with someone that you're not doing anything wrong.
Right.
Like the person was a great person. Yeah. You're not crossing any lines. It was literally like, that's not the person for you.
Yeah. To this day, it was probably one of the like most beneficial relationships I've ever been in. And I mean friendships, dating, all types of relationships of teaching me to be more like Jesus, showing me the heart of the Lord for myself, making me more like him, making me deal with issues that I had of insecurity and finding my value in all the wrong places, taught me what I wanted in a husband, what I wanted in a man, those kind of things. And so I think the Lord will totally use those relationships. And because the way we broke up was honoring, we were able to stay friends, you know? So
there you go.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so I'll say this, like we definitely need to wrap up. I just looked at the time. But like if you do this well, if you do healthy dating well, right? Doesn't mean you're gonna be perfect. You're gonna make mistakes.
Never.
Yeah.
But you do healthy dating well, and then you do break up in a respectful, honoring way. Yeah. There is a potential that this doesn't have to be a life-ending thing where it's like, oh my gosh, we can't even be in the room together anymore because we just hate each other so much and we've crossed so many physical boundaries that it's awkward and like all of these different things. Like I would absolutely be embarrassed to walk into a room with a man that I'm like, you've seen me naked and I've seen you naked before. and we've broken up, right? Yeah. So like it makes it really hard to still do community together if you cross boundaries. Or if you broke up and then you were like, he's a jerk and he's this, and you start slandering him, it's going to be really hard to be in the same community. Yeah. But if you do all that stuff the way that God has ordained for it to be done, and then you break up in a way that's like, I honor you as a man of God or as a woman of God, I just don't want you to be my spouse. Yeah. Then great, we'll heal, we'll grieve, we'll move on, and we still are going to respect and honor each other, right? Yeah. Super good. Thanks so much, guys. I love y'all so much. Y'all are amazing. Hey, thanks so much for joining the podcast. You can like, subscribe, hit the bell, comments. People have been teaching me all the things, so I'm learning them. But do all that stuff. We love you guys a ton. We'll see you soon.
Bye.